Hello and welcome. Thank you so much for choosing my session on unmasking the hidden, coping and identifying with toxicity in the professional environment. Whether you're a teacher or you're in ECE leadership, we all have to deal with toxicity no matter what we do in life. It could be within your childcare program, it could be within your home, or just going to the grocery store. And we are all familiar with overt toxicity that is just apparent and obvious, like the gossip that we have to deal with, people talking badly about each other, or just treating people rudely. But there's other types of toxicity that really doesn't feel good, but it can be hard for us to identify, and it can be harder for us to deal with because it leaves us feeling confused, and it leaves us feeling almost small. So that's what we're going to be diving into in this session, is really unmasking that hidden toxicity that can become a poison to the work environment. This could be the parents that you deal with, or it could be your coworkers. So whether you're managing or you're just having to get along and work together, by the end of this session, I will teach you different things to look for, and I'll also show you how to help yourself in dealing with this toxicity within the workplace. So before we get started, I'd like to introduce myself. It is nice to meet each one of you, and many of you have probably already seen me before. My name is Evelyn Knight. I am the founder and CEO of Childcare Business Professionals, which is a company that really empowers private childcare programs to become the best for the children and the best businesses. I'm the host of the Childcare Business Coach podcast, and I'm a childcare center owner. I have worked every single position in a childcare center. I'm also a two-time TED Talk speaker, and which I have represented early childhood education. My goal is to really inform the world on why ECE is so absolutely important and why the work we do is the most important work in the world. It's something I believe with all my heart, and I do believe that we can change the world through early childhood education, which is why I am leading the charge in the ECE revolution in order for us to make the world a better place through teaching young children the competencies that they need to be the best that they possibly can and to be loving, gracious adults. And you, as the adults in their lives, can help them become that. So dealing with toxic people is something that these children have to deal with. It's something that's developing within the first 5 years of life. So helping you to really empower you in identifying will also trickle down to the children. The better that you can show up for them, the better off they'll be. And protecting your mental health from toxicity is very, very important. For those of you leaders who are taking this course, I want to really caution you. A healthy person is not going to last in a toxic environment. Hear me loud and clear. A healthy person is not going to last in a toxic environment. So if you are allowing toxicity to run rampant in your center, whether it's covert or just obvious, your healthier teachers are going to feel uncomfortable, and they're probably not going to stick with you. Teachers, I'm sure that resonates with many of you. That toxicity is so hard to deal with. So I'm going to show you how to help you and really for you to stand in your power. You may love the program you're working with, and maybe your management isn't supporting you in dealing with this toxicity, but you can stand in your own power and take charge in these situations. You don't have to deal with it, and you can do it with kindness. You can do it with grace. And that is something I really want to just drive home before we even get started. I did a podcast episode, which is also live on my YouTube channel, that talks about the difference between being a kind person and being a nice person. Many of us who are subjected to toxicity and the abuse that can come with it are usually very nice people. A nice person can allow themselves to get walked on, right? But a kind person does not allow that for themselves. It is kind to be honest and truthful. There was a period in my life that someone showed me kindness by telling me some really hard things that I needed to hear. I was told to my face that I wear masks and that I was fake and that I was robbing the world of my true self because I couldn't step into who I really am. That was hard to hear, but it was the kindest thing that person, that honesty was the kindest thing that person could do for me. Now, it doesn't sound very nice, does it? And that's okay. Sometimes being kind is not being nice, but being kind is being truthful. So go listen to that podcast episode on the Child Care Business Coach podcast. It really will empower you. I'm not going to waste your time with all those details. We're going to dive into really tackling what it is that you need to protect yourself from. Okay, so what is toxicity? Toxic behavior is any behavior that creates negativity or psychological harm to the collective, right? So it could be within your family unit, it could be within a church organization or any club that you belong to. Toxic people do not care how their actions affect others. That is key for you guys. Toxic people do not care. They are very self-centered. And they really are in it for them. They don't care about the residual damage that happens, which is why they just kind of leave this wake of just negativity in their path. They also have a very hard time taking accountability, and they don't have a mindset of growth. They're okay being stuck with who they are and where they are. As a leader, I own 4 different companies and I employ different people. As a leader who has to show up and lead people, there is one thing I will fire someone on the spot for, and that is not being able to take accountability. The reason that is because I understand that I can fix any problem a person is going through, any behavior, anything, if they can come to me and say, I was wrong about that. But I cannot help somebody who does not see that they have a problem and will not take responsibility for it. So the reason this is so important for you to understand is sometimes we waste our breath trying to convince someone and trying to get them to see where they are wrong. But it's important for you to know that you are doing just that. You're wasting your breath, and it's not worth your time and energy. That is such a deep-seated toxic trait that you really don't want to let yourself become consumed by that. So, what are types of toxic actions that take place? Most of you will know these, and there's the covert and the overt, right? The obvious stuff. Let's go backwards and look at the obvious first. We know gossiping, somebody who is so negative, everything is just doom and gloom. And I like to call it like the Eeyore effect. You know, when that person's in, it's like Eeyore, right? There's that rain cloud following them everywhere. That is somebody who's very overt. That passive aggressive behavior where they take those digs all the time, and everybody knows that person, you know, Judy over there, she's just toxic. She's got that passive aggressive behavior going on. Everyone in the organization understands and knows that. This one may not be so overt, but it is something that we need to, and I think this one could kind of go back and forth between covert and overt, which is the victim mentality. Somebody who is stuck in a victim mentality is really focused on all the negativity. And it's like life just happens to them, right? They don't understand that you get to choose. Life happens for you. It happens because of you. Your actions cause things to happen in your life. And people often don't know how to take accountability for their choices. I teach an entire series on this and helping you break free of victim mentality and really understanding how you can step in and take control. We each get to choose, right? And it's really powerful when you stop letting things happen to you and you take control of your life. And yes, you can. I am a widow. My husband passed away over 2 years ago. And I have been able to stand in my power, even through something that hard to deal with and tragic. And so there's not very many situations that you can't. But it's those people that every time they come into work, something new happened, some huge tragedy, right? It's that victim just stuck in that. Why does life always happen to me? When's it going to get better? That is the victim mentality. People who are overly controlling, people who are overly needy, people who are entitled. We see that a lot in our society today. As an employer, that is very hard to manage. People who are overly empathetic. I am guilty right here. Guilty, guilty, guilty. I will make up excuses for everybody's bad behavior. That is very toxic and something I need to be aware of. People who are vindictive and always seeking revenge, and it kind of holds hands with holding grudges, right? So those are pretty obvious. Those are the people where kind of think about it in the sense of when they walk in the room, everybody's like, oh, great, look who's here again. The toxicity that isn't so obvious is things like gaslighting. We all, for the most part, know what gaslighting is. So gaslighting is when someone makes you believe something that isn't true, right? So like, for example, a teacher, let's actually use management as an example. A manager might have really dropped the ball and forgotten to call a parent whose child had a high fever. And they told them, like the teacher, you can go to the manager and say, hey, this child has really high fever. Manager forgets to call, parent comes in, and now the parent is furious, right? So then when the parent leaves, the manager comes in and they'll say something like, wow, I can't believe you really dropped the ball on this one. And at first you're like, wait, what? I didn't drop the ball. I told you this child was sick. I told you you needed to call. And they will bring it back on you and say something like, you know how much I forget everything. You should have reminded me. I can't believe you didn't remind me. After 30 minutes, you should have just known to remind me. And in this case, they're taking no accountability, and they literally leave you feeling like, oh, you're right. I should have reminded you. They'll do things almost like to get you to feel sorry for them or to twist it in a way where it's hard to argue. Like in the beginning, you know you're right. But by the time the conversation is over, you're kind of questioning like, ooh, maybe I was wrong. I know how busy my director is. She gets so overwhelmed and so busy. She's right. I should have reminded her. This really is my fault. This child is in my classroom, and it really is my responsibility. Gosh, what kind of teacher am I for forgetting to remind my director to make this phone call, knowing how much pressure she's under? That is gaslighting. That is absolute gaslighting, right? But as I just illustrated, it can be so easy for us to believe and to place blame upon ourselves. Sabotaging. Sabotaging is something too that you might not see. And it's something that you may have a sense of, but again, kind of like gaslighting, it makes you feel like maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm not really seeing this happen. I had a huge case of of sabotage happen to me. And basically, I had a teacher that was working for me. She led me to believe that she was just this amazing, and she was an amazing teacher, but she was going around to my staff, telling them what an awful boss I was, telling them that I was breaking all these laws, which turned out not to be true. And basically, it's a very long story. I'm not going to get into it, but was really creating situations and putting me specifically in situations that was sabotaging me. Like I could not win. It's called putting somebody in a double bind, right? A double bind is no matter what I did, I was going to be vilified because of this stories she was planting in people's head before I even got there, right? And it's going to look something like they might come to you and say, oh, look at you. You look so tired today. You should ask management to let you go home early. If they really value you, they're going to let you go home early. And then that same teacher might go to management and say, oh, Susie over there, she's complaining again. I'm just warning you now, she's going to try to go home early again. You know how she is. She just doesn't think about her coworkers. And then when you approach management and say, I'm really tired. If somebody can get to go home early, can it be me? Now in both situations, manager's like, oh, right. That thought was planted in her head. Oh, great. Here she is again. And they're going to say no. And maybe even have some kind of like snarky response. While Susie here is like, oh, wow. Mary was right. They aren't going to let me go. They don't value me. So that's where sabotage happens. And it happens a lot. It's kind of the same as manipulation. Manipulation is also very covert a lot of times, where people can really trick you into getting what they want out of you. And manipulation, you're probably going to see little bits of it in every single one of these things that I say, right? Like the sabotaging I just gave you. Well, there's definitely some manipulation in there. Parents might manipulate you into feeling guilty about staying late to take care of their child, or to keep secrets from their spouse, or different things, or babysit, right? It's that really manipulating that can be covert, where they get you, it kind of like they can use that victim mentality to manipulate you. A superiority complex. This is something where people just feel like they're better than you. The same teacher I was talking about earlier that was really gaslighting and sabotaging, she thought she was better than everybody. She would come in with this, oh, you're just so lucky. I am your co-teacher. Let me save you from this situation. Or, wow, you really can't deal with that child. Here, let me save you from that. And it makes you feel sometimes like, gosh, it just makes you feel small. For some people, you might be like, oh, she is so haughty. But for other people, the same type of behavior might make you feel small and like you're not enough, right? This is something that managers, you have to be really careful not to do this. Do not have the superiority complex. It's really this fine line over staying professional and having that leadership over your staff, but not separating yourself in a way like you're better than them, right? It's very toxic. That's self-centered. Sometimes it's hard to see that. And sometimes people can gaslight us into not seeing it. Being destructively critical, always looking for the negative, right? Always criticizing. A teacher could constantly be criticizing staff. When I'm doing job interviews, I ask questions that are psychologically based so that I can see if somebody is destructively critical, right? I'll ask them something like, tell me about your last employer. What was the worst part of your job? And if they just go off, then they're destructively critical. The need for power. If someone has to have power, they cannot delegate. They can't share responsibility. So co-teachers, I like co-teachers in my center. I really, sometimes leads are necessary, but I prefer teamwork. If someone can't handle that and they have to have the power, that is toxic. Lack of empathy, not having the ability to feel for your coworkers and what's happening around you. Devaluing. This, you guys, is rampant in childcare. I want you to hear me on this. How many teachers and management staff I hear devaluing parents is just not okay. Devaluing their influence on life, devaluing their choices for the children or how they're parenting. None of us know what their struggles are behind doors, and none of us have a right to judge. But that judgment becomes so devaluing. So it's something I really caution all of us against. And then the hypocrisy, right? Just that going from one person to another, not being the person you say, judging unfairly when you're doing the same thing you judge for. One of the things I'm going to pause here just to talk to you guys a little bit about. There are things in here I am sure you thought to yourself, oh my gosh, that's me. That is absolutely me. Wait a second. And yes, every single one of us has toxic traits. All of us do. It is part of the human condition. Awareness is the key. When you're aware, like I pointed out to you, I am overly empathetic. I absolutely am. Let's see, I used to really be stuck in a victim mentality, and I was able to fight my way out of it, which is why I now empower people to fight their way out of it. There's a lot of different things that you might suddenly feel like, oh my gosh, am I a toxic person? Having toxic traits does not make you a toxic person. Being aware of them empowers you. It empowers you not to be that person. So take this information to help you become the best next version of you. It really will empower you when you can just say, sometimes I'm needy. I'm going to work on that. But it's also empowering for you to identify it around you, because it can help you to, first of all, understand we're all human. We all have toxic traits, and we can show our coworkers and the people in our life grace, right? Because we do too. So understanding, though, how to protect yourself up for it or from it, and how to stand in your power and not allow it to affect your day. I counseled one of my teachers just today, and she was really frustrated, and said that the way a parent came at her, she said, I was just so overjoyed today. I was feeling like I was working at my 10, and then this parent came in, and I felt like I just dropped to a 3, and it just deflated me. And I asked her, why would you give someone that much power? I know it's hard to deal with this. I know it's hard, but you get to choose. You get to choose if you're going to give your power away. And I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit, because we are going to go much more into detail on that in a minute. So the core of toxicity is a lack of emotional intelligence. Luckily for us, that is what we do in early childhood education. If you are in a high quality program, then your centers should be revolving around enhancing the children's emotional intelligence, right? And I began this by telling you, we are literally helping children learn right now not to grow up to be toxic people. Because from 0 to 5, these types of traits are formed, protecting yourself from these types of traits, because emotional intelligence is literally forming in the first 5 years of life. So when you learn to identify this in yourself and in others, you can empower the children to really take charge and stay in power of their life, instead of allowing other people to suck that out of you. So what are the components of emotional intelligence? They are the ability to manage your own emotions and understand the emotions of others around you, right? That is literally your ability to manage your own emotions and to understand and empathize with others. Self-awareness is key. It is the key. Self-regulation. How do you handle yourself in these situations? Again, do you allow it to ruin your day? Decision-making ability. How does it affect your ability to make decisions? How does it affect your social emotional skills? And how do you empathize? And again, for those of you in high quality centers, you know you're teaching all of this. So think about it this way. A person who is really just toxic and they are living in that space, they did not have a healthy early childhood education experience like what we can bring to the children. And that is why I know ECE can change the world. So how do we deal with toxic behaviors? First and foremost, you're going to want to identify the behavior and how is it negatively impacting you. Identify the specific behavior and how is it negatively impacting you, your center, whatever. Construct a plan for you. How are you going to take action to protect yourself? This might be something as simple as, I'm going to avoid that person and I am not going to put myself in situations where we engage. If we're on the playground together at the same time, I am going to go to one station and she can stay at the other. Prepare conversations to confront issues. I highly, highly recommend this. Stand in your power. A conversation can be kind, like I said earlier, and it can be polite. The teacher I was counseling today, I gave her permission to tell that parent, when you speak to me like that, I really feel disrespected And when I feel disrespected, I just completely stop listening. So please, next time you approach me, just think before you talk and act in kindness. I really will appreciate it. And that'll help me to feel respected. And when I feel respected, I am more open to listening to what you have to say. It's as simple as that. It really is. And I did also say, do not approach her when she's escalated, because when people are escalated, just like children, their brain shuts off. We go into our amygdala instead of our frontal lobe, and we stop listening, just like the children, right? We are humans, whether you're 2 or you're 32. That's just how the human brain works. And implement. Confront the issue and present your plan. Just like that. Your plan is to tell the teacher or that parent, you cannot tolerate being talked to like that. Teachers, I do suggest go to your management first though and tell them, hey, this is what the parent said to me. This is how they talked to me. Tomorrow, I'm just going to ask them and just tell them to please speak to me with respect. And you can even start the conversation by saying, I'm sorry to have to bring this up, but I really felt disrespected. And I know that wasn't your intention, but please next time. And I just really want to bring this to your attention so we can have a great working relationship. Now that is really non-confrontational, right? And it's not uncomfortable when you word it correctly. Monitor progress and look for opportunities where you can show that person support, right? So if the next time that parent comes to you and they're much kinder, if your manager comes to you kinder, if you are a manager and you go to your employee or they come to you much kinder, tell them like, hey, thank you so much for hearing me. Thank you so much for treating me with respect and kindness. So this is the response cycle. This is basically a basic psychological response cycle. This is something I developed years ago, and I teach an entire workshop on this as well. But when I was creating this lesson, I realized that this is actually very useful, and I don't have a lot of time, but I am going to go over it with you. So everything that we do in life it's always the same cycle. There's a situation, something happens. We form a perspective, and I see when I uploaded my slide, it didn't quite upload right, but we're going to go with it. We form a perspective based on that situation. Our perspectives come from our life experiences and what we live every single day, our past, our history, everything. That situation and our perspective forms thoughts. Those thoughts create emotions inside of us. And those emotions cause us to respond the way we do, right? I can guarantee you, you and I can be in the same situation, but because we have different life experiences that cause us to form different perspectives, we're going to have different thoughts around it. And something that may make you furious may not faze me at all. I'll see it completely different. So we're going to have completely different emotions in that situation. That is going to cause us to respond very differently. Our response, what causes outcomes. So if you stop and pause and even count to 3 and go through this cycle in your mind, you can really change the outcomes of so many things in your life. If you just really think and pause. Nobody can make you feel anything. Nobody can. Your perspective and your thoughts are what cause your emotions. Do not give your power away by letting someone think they are causing you to feel something, because they're not. So that is the time I have today. Again, this training goes much more in depth. I teach on just that response cycle alone, and I do teach more on this very subject. So follow me. That will get that. If you scan that, that is my link tree that will take you to all my social media, my website, my podcast, all the things that you can follow me. Hopefully this was helpful for you. I would love for you to email or message me and let me know. And subscribe to my podcast. I am so thrilled to be here again with you guys. I hope everybody really enjoyed this and it was useful, and I can see you in my own network. Have a great rest of your time here, everybody.